It's the struggle we can all relate to. It's a struggle that 1 out of every 1 gamer will experience in their lifetime. We have too many games. And we keep buying new games before we finish playing the ones we were supposed to finish. It's a decades-long battle with no end in sight. So one day, I said, screw it. I need to play some more games. And this channel needs more content. It's on my to-do list after all. So let's tackle some games in my backlog. It'll be a mix of stuff. Mostly shooters, but it's a mix nonetheless. I think we'd all be surprised what games your fellow gamers haven't played yet. I was surprised when I found out there were large gaming streamers who said they've never played Super Mario 64. But then I remember that game is almost 30 years old and not everyone owned an N64 growing up. Even the Wii is considered retro by today's standards. I think I just gave myself arthritis by saying that, but this old timer likes to ramble from time to time. Let's attack the backlog. So I bought Panzer Dragoon Remake on PSN. It was during one of Sony's sales. Don't remember which one. And I spent about $3 including tax. So I figured, why not? 2024 can be the year I get into Panzer. Originally released on the Sega Saturn in 1995, Panzer Dragoon was sort of like Sega's answer to Nintendo's Star Fox. It's an on-rail shooter just like Star Fox. But what really sets it apart is the ability to look and shoot from the sides and back. You can tell where the enemies are by the position of the yellow dots in the top right. The only downside is that you can't move unless you're facing forward, so you need to shoot the projectiles because you're a sitting duck. You just fly around and shoot down weird-looking creatures and airships, and that's the gist of it. Pretty straightforward. The plot is about humans in a post-apocalyptic world fighting an evil empire for control. In a world where ancient technology and creatures are being used for war, the main character pilots a dragon in order to stop another dragon from reaching an ancient rune and becoming the Super Dragon.
Super Dragon!
The remake came out in 2020, published by Forever Entertainment and developed by the Polish studio Megapixel. And there's a remake of the second game supposedly in the works. But how does the remake compare to the original Saturn version? Is it better or worse? That's a tough question actually. There is more graphical fidelity and a higher frame rate overall, and there are options to change the music if you'd rather hear the arranged soundtrack or the original. Personally, I don't think a MIDI sound bank could ever be a replacement for a real orchestra, but it's cool that they got Sayori Kobayashi, the longtime composer for the Panzer Dragoon franchise, on board. And she knocks it out of the park no matter what game she works on, even if it's some Super Nintendo Inspector Gadget game. Oh, we had to dig deep to find that one. But it doesn't matter how good you are. You're never gonna replace Yoshitaka Azuma's score. Azuma treated the game as if it was a movie, with the music timed with the events on screen and ending when the level ends. They didn't use an orchestra for every song, only a few of them, but even the MIDI arrangements are pretty good as well. And I was bummed to find out Azuma passed away over a decade ago, but he left behind one of the best soundtracks that Sega ever put out. The first level theme is iconic, one of the best first level themes you'll ever hear. I do feel like some of the cutscenes did take a beating in the remake. The characters have some janky movements here and there, and the whole thing feels a bit cheap at times. I think I also got carsick during the intro cutscene. Do you think there's enough motion blur and camera shake? And they also took out the dithered light shafts coming from the ceiling. I don't know how I feel about this. But on the plus side, the levels have more background details and I can actually make out the enemies, which looked like unrecognizable blobs of polygons before. Visually, it's night and day if we compare it to the original. And I stuck with the PS4 version of the game, which has trophies which you can't get on the Nintendo Switch. But some of these trophies are just fucking stupid. 100 plus hours in game. Who the fuck is playing Panzer Dragoon for 100 hours? What sick bastard thought of this? The game itself is a very short game. It's almost an hour long. You're telling me that I have to play this game 100 times? I'd have to leave my PS5 on for 4 days straight. This is worse than the 7-day Survivor trophy in Dead Rising. And that's a 14-hour trophy. Or the Tetris Effect one where you spin the Tetraminos 1 million times. Shout out to the 0.1% of people dedicated enough to do this shit. I didn't feel like the game was really that hard, and that was from me playing on normal. I did switch to hard and they get a bit ruthless with the bullets. Some enemies just fire as soon as they appear, but most of the bosses were kinda easy to get through. They had to make them invincible at certain times to pad out the fights. I honestly thought the final boss was a pushover. The Super Dragon. If you beat him on hard, he has a second phase. He was still a pushover. Gameplay-wise, it's pretty much the same except now you have analog controller support, which definitely helps this game. I could never go back to the D-pad after this. You can aim with the right stick if you feel like it. There are options for inverting the axes, and of course, accessibility options for modern audiences. Just kidding, we got cheat codes in this bitch. Just like in the original, you get the Konami code after you beat the game for some extra stuff. Enable God mode, rapid fire, start from any level, which makes capturing footage for this game very convenient. And the usual stuff like artwork and music are all here, including a photo mode so you can see all the fine details of each level. Panzer Dragoon is more of an experience than a game, and it's definitely an experience worth getting into. I am interested in checking out the rest of the series. Zwei, Orta, and Saga, which I heard may be the best entry in the series and one of the best games on the Sega Saturn. But there's one problem. Have you seen how much this game goes for? It's currently going for a fucking stupid amount of money right now. And they said piracy was immoral. I had to re-record everything in 4K because the bitrate would get destroyed by all the particle effects and crap. A giant pile of pixelated vomit was all that remains. Redout was fucking awesome. Playing this on a PS5 was something special. In a world where futuristic anti-gravity racing games are few and far between, Redout became a torchbearer for the genre. Inspired by games like F-Zero and Wipeout, Redout was developed and published by the Milan-based studio 34 Big Things, and co-published by Nicalis and 505 Games. You may know 505 from a recent game called Control, and the PC version of Death Stranding. Redout is super fast, bright and colorful, and tons of fun. I must warn you that I do hit the wall a bunch of times in these playthroughs, because real men don't use brakes. Captain Falcon was a terrible influence on me. It does take some time to get used to the controls. It's not too far of a divergence from most racing games out there. You control your ship with the left stick, but the right stick actually helps with strafing, turning, and for getting through shuttle loops. You'll definitely get the hang of it after a few hours, and it'll feel great when you do. But realistically, you'll be slamming into walls as if your alcoholic stepdad was behind the wheel. You go flying in Redout. You'll be flying off the tracks, you'll be slamming into shit, you'll die a horrible death. It's fun. The thing that really sells me is just how fast your car goes. That sense of speed is what I usually look for in these kinds of games, especially when you get higher tier machines and get into the more difficult challenges later on. If you want to maximize your fun, install the Slipstream enhancer and watch the flesh peel off your bones as you go from 0 to 1300 kilometers per hour in seconds. I found this and the AP to be very useful. Also, the repair drone is a must-have for me. And being that this is a high-speed, futuristic racing game, you will have to rely on track memorization, especially with all the blind turns and crap this game throws at you. There's this one spot where the arrows point to the left, so I turn left. And I hit a wall because the left turn is there, and not here. What the fuck? There's a campaign mode where you race against the AI, time trials, sometimes a contract will be given to you, and if you fulfill it, you get some extra money. You can also unlock new vehicles and upgrade them with the money you win from doing races, sort of like F-Zero GX. And the ships also have weapons and other interchangeable abilities that can be selected and upgraded before a race. We also got a bunch of tracks and challenges, online multiplayer, which, let's be real, nobody plays anymore. It's basically a ghost town at this point. And an EDM soundtrack by, I'm probably gonna fuck this up, Aram Shabazians and Nils Ivar Holtar, which you can find and listen to on Spotify. There's elements of all different genres of music married with trance, techno, drum and bass, and even a guitar solo here and there, as if it was ripped straight from the Wipeout and GX soundtracks. The boss tracks are wild though. Each track is like 5 minutes in length, and you race on every track from that world in 2 big laps. Your hands will be shaking by the time it's over. You ever watch the ending of 2001: A Space Odyssey? That happened to me. Exactly like that. I now understand the meaning of life. I still won the race, by the way.
Congratulations, gold medal awarded.
And there is a fair amount of challenge if you want those gold or even those platinum medals. There's just a massive drought for futuristic racing games, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed for a renaissance to happen. At least we have Aero GPX to satiate that hunger a little longer. I miss these kinds of games. As a child raised in the dark and seething underbelly of Mute City, Redout absolutely appeals to me. There's really not much else to say. Go out and buy Redout. It's a fantastic looking game, plays great, and will probably give you a seizure if you play for an extended period of time. The first game is dirt cheap and has tons of DLC available for it. And while you're at it, pick up Redout 2 as well. I know I will.
Congratulations, gold medal awarded.
Somebody had a fucking stroke when they came up with that title. Is Batrider even a word? I looked it up and Urban Dictionary says it's a person obsessed with Batman. Does that mean I qualify as a Batrider? I can tell you right now that this shit has absolutely nothing to do with Batman. And it also has nothing to do with Dota either. I can also tell you that Armed Police Batrider was an absolute bastard of a shoot-em-up. A true quarter thief with the sole intention of leaving you broke and starving. Because the enemies and the bosses love to flood the entire screen with as many bullets as humanly possible, while constantly sucker punching you with attacks that you will never see coming. I died a bunch of times because my attention was focused on this hailstorm of bullets, then all of a sudden a new attack catches me off guard and I lose a life. It happens constantly in Batrider. When things start to get crazy, they get fucking bananas. This game is not very beginner friendly, but because it's an arcade game, I just jump right back in with a new set of lives. It may be a cheap bastard of a game, but it's still visually impressive and fun to play no matter how many times you die. There's actually a lot of things going on under the hood. It changes difficulty based on your performance, similar to how God Hand gets harder the better you play. You can select your speed and strength, which depends on what button you press when you select your ship, and you can change the speed of your shots with the start and fire buttons together. It's pretty deep for an arcade shoot-em-up from 1998. There's also this charge you get when you let go of the fire button. It's a close-range attack that I get absolutely no use out of. Because, well, you try to get close to this thing without dying. When you hit the fire button again, your options stay in place so you can expand your range. And each character gets their own unique bombs, which works as a panic button as well. And bombs in aiding games don't work like bombs in most shmups. You collect fragments of a bomb over time until you get a full bomb. You can set off a bomb as long as you have a fraction of it. But depending on how much you collected, it doesn't last as long. So use it when you need it most. Also, I didn't know this at first, but Armed Police Batrider is actually a crossover. It's like the king of fighters of shoot-em-ups. There are characters and bosses from various other Rising and aiding games, and your power-up system is jacked straight from Backlog. There's so many characters in this game. Most shooters didn't even have more than 4 ships. The size of the roster is nuts. You can select teams of 3 and alternate between your teammates when you die, or create your own custom teams, or choose one character only. There's a bunch of difficulty options. There's even a boss rush. For an arcade game that's never saw a console release, this is awesome. The advanced mode has the full game, all 7 levels, and they all fly by pretty quick. The other modes cut the game short, or the special mode, which again is a boss rush mode. Real quick, can I ask a serious question? What the fuck is up with this timer? I honestly don't think this game needs a timer at all, especially one as quick as 10 seconds. Battlegorega didn't have a timer, so why does this game need one? And SNK Playmore were complete dicks about this stuff too. When you play a fighting game for the first time and the game is telling you to move your ass and pick somebody with a 10-second timer looming over your head, how is that fair? 20 is okay, I guess, but 10 seconds is way too fucking short. But hey, whatever makes you guys 1/4 extra, I guess. And I don't get the end screens. It could be cool, or wonderful, or marvelous, but no matter how good or how terrible I play, the message just comes up different every time. I could kick ass, kill the boss in no time, and have 0 deaths, and all I get is a cool rating, or I play like shit and somehow it's marvelous. It's mocking me. Regardless, it's still a damn shame Batrider never got ported over. It did well enough in the arcades to warrant it. Probably because it stole everyone's money with its fast timer and brutal difficulty.
Cheap bastards.
But with a great art style, a plot about vigilantes on hoverbikes dispensing justice in the distant, faraway year of 2014, and a killer soundtrack by Manabu Namiki, Kenichi Koyano, and Hitoshi Sakamoto, the guy who worked on the dopest fuck Gauntlet 4 soundtrack, you know I gotta give them a shout out when they write songs called Let's Kick Ass Together, and that Stage 5 theme. Batrider was a good time. So it turns out this game is the second game in a quote, Bat trilogy. So I had to check out the other 2 games as well. So let's take a look at the other 2 games. I have no idea what Manabu Namiki was smoking when he came up with the soundtrack for Gurega, but I want him to smoke a lot more of it. I want him to pass that shit to me before he ODs on it, because this soundtrack slaps. How hard does it slap? That hard. I've dipped into this soundtrack before for one of my videos. It is that good. God damn, level 5 is amazing. The one where it's just ship after ship after ship. Just a seemingly endless buffet of warships and power-ups. This is like crack for my brain. I need more. And the best track in the game, in my opinion. The arranged version, though? Holy shit. And the game itself might not be as visually vibrant as Batrider, it is still a great shooter nonetheless, still using a rank system to determine its difficulty, which would carry over into games like Batrider. What the rank system actually does is it gets higher when you collect medals or excess power-ups, or if you do anything really. It goes down when you die, and it also gradually goes down too. My greedy ass is just gonna grab whatever drops because I've been programmed that way. Without the knowledge that this game gets more difficult the more I score, I get bombarded heavily. It gets to a point where these games become a nightmare. Just the way I like it. A YouTuber by the name of Pearl, ASEPRL, goes more into detail about how games like Batrider and Gurega work, while giving you a walkthrough on how to 1-credit these games. He'll give you the finest dirt on the game, and how aiding shooters work while making an absolute bastard of a game look much easier than it actually is. The ranking system is so punishing that pro players intentionally lose lives to lower their rank. And then I found out that this is actually a common thing across arcade shooters. And then I found out that pressing C to select a ship gives it a smaller hitbox. What else haven't you told me? But seriously, give Pearl some views. One major gripe I have is that the bullets, even on a large monitor, can be very hard to see. It stems from 2 issues. One is that some of them are just too small to identify, especially if your monitor isn't in the world-renowned Tate mode.
Tate? You mean Tate? Whatever.
And the second is that there are particles flying off enemies when you shoot them. They blend in with their bullets and your bullets, and it becomes a giant mess. The screen just becomes chaos. You get 4 ships to play with when you boot up the game, but just like in Panzer Dragoon, there's a Konami code here too. And the Konami code unlocks additional ships. Probably the best ships in the game. Ships that were taken from another Rising game called Sorcerer Striker, or Maho Daisakusen in Japan. Here's a quick review of that game. That's it, that's the review. Each ship has different stats and different bombs to play with, like a flamethrower and a cluster of missiles. You want to hold on to those bombs for when you absolutely need them because the bullet patterns can be ridiculous at times. The bombs are mainly used for clearing the bullets when the screen becomes more bullets than screen, but some bombs are a bit more reliable than others. Sometimes the Flying Baron's missiles get me killed because they don't deploy fast enough. The Grasshopper seems to be the most reliable as it comes out instantly and it doesn't veer off like the Silver Sword's bombs. And any ship with massive flamethrowers usually appeals to me, but the Wild Snail is as slow as its namesake. Garega is yet another word that probably doesn't exist and I really don't care. It's been ported to the Sega Saturn and a bunch of more modern consoles like the PS4 and Xbox One. It's gotten much better treatment than Batrider and Battle Backraid for sure. But sometimes I look back on some of the footage I captured and think, how the fuck is anyone supposed to dodge this shit? If you're like me and you gave the rank system the middle finger like I did, this game and Batrider are going to give you 10 middle fingers back. But Garega has earned a decent reputation over the years. It's a very highly regarded shmup. It's a favorite amongst a lot of shmup fans. It has great graphics and enemy design, a gritty atmosphere, a soundtrack that can't be beat, all kinds of secrets and unique mechanics. And no matter how many times the game craps all over me, I keep putting quarters in. It's not perfect. I did have my gripes, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy the hell out of Garega. If I had to rank the Bat trilogy, Batrider is at the top, Garega is a very, very close second, and Backraid has to be at the bottom. Speaking of Backraid, let me check real quick. Yep, still not a real word. But it should be. I'm just tired of words like bussin' and thirst trap becoming words and not Batrider or Backrid. But at least Embiggen got in.
It's a perfectly cromulent word.
Backraid is the last installment of the Bat trilogy. Each game in the trilogy was programmed by Shinobu Yagawa, recognizable by his initials YGW. He worked on these games before he jumped over the cave. The man is a solid programmer and a legend in the shmup genre. Backraid was this culmination of the previous two entries in terms of both presentation and gameplay. Like Aiding has taken everything they've learned and applied it to this game. Backraid has the selectable teams that Batrider has, and all the mechanics of Garega thrown in. Still got that stupid timer I see. The bombs, power-ups, the rank system, and all those different game-altering inputs from Garega are all here. Although none of the characters from the previous Aiding games are here, and I find that to be a shame because of all the personality that Batrider had, is something that Backraid is heavily lacking in. We just have these 9 faceless ships now, and I couldn't tell you the names of any of them or what their stats were. It would be nice if they did have their stats on display so I don't pick the slow ships by accident, but at least they have their own unique charge attacks. Let go of the fire button, charge up, and you become the bullet hell. They all have their own attacks, which is probably my favorite thing about Backraid. And the bombs. Still useful. Even more useful than the last 2 games in my opinion. But every ship has the same generic bomb now. They used to have flamethrowers and giant buzzsaws and all kinds of cool shit, and now everybody gets the same generic bomb now. But they are great for clearing bullets and they do tons of damage to bosses. And I feel like this game, out of the 3 games in the Bat trilogy, is probably the most accessible one to get into. I feel like it's easier of the 3 for sure. Maybe it's because I've been playing Aiding games in one big marathon, and I see pink bullets every time I close my eyes. Maybe it's because I think I had the fewest deaths in this one than the last 2 Bat games. But saying this game was the easier of the 3 shmups is like saying glass is easier to chew than rusty nails. Still a quarter-stealing bastard that would leave you sleeping on the floor of a Starbucks after taking your money. I did state earlier that this game goes to the bottom of the Bat trilogy rank for me. For example, level 1 is a whopping 25 seconds long before the first boss appears. Where's the rest of the damn level? And I've been browsing some forums about these games, especially Backraid, and one user claimed it was a kamikaze simulator if you're going for the high score. This game not only has the ranking system and the ability to chain medals, but it also includes enemy chaining. What the fuck is enemy chaining? Killing big enemies adds more time to the counter and increases your score multiplier. Every 2 million points, you get an extra life. This review from a site called Socks Make People Sexy, this is a real website by the way, claims that it's possible to get 50 extra lives by abusing the living hell out of the system. But I wasn't exactly playing for score. I was playing for fun and maybe survival, which sounds more enjoyable in comparison when I think about it. But if you are playing for score, God have mercy on you because this game won't. The better you do, the harder it gets. So you have to die to keep your rank low and your score up. Hence the term, Kamikaze Simulator. I tried my damnedest to get the score up to 2 million, to try and demonstrate what score chaining on a professional level looks like. I didn't really get very far. I'm still kind of a noob at Backlog, maybe in due time, but I can see how going for the high score with these multipliers can drive someone to the brink of madness. There's just no games like shoot 'em ups. It's a fantastic genre, and I find myself in a shmup bender every now and then. But like I said before, bottom of the trilogy. Not because I find it terrible, it was pretty good, but having to follow the last 2 games is a tough feat. Even the music has incredible shoes to fill. Atsuhiro Motoyama has taken over the composition this time. He had previously worked on the Bloody Roar games. Motoyama has an interesting resume. He'll work on these cutesy games like the Kuririn games, and then you'll see Bloody Roar and Backraid on here too. If that's not range, I don't know what is. And I think he does a decent job here. He's not topping Garega anytime soon, but still a fine soundtrack nonetheless. And Motoyama, Namiki, and Koyano, all 3 composers I mentioned earlier, all work together on another shooter called Daimahu, which happens to be a Capcom-published shooter, and a highly underrated one too. Maybe we'll save that for another video. But if you enjoyed Garega and Batrider, or shooters made by people who are criminally insane, you absolutely have to play Backraid. It also never got ported over like Batrider, so the only way to play those games is to shell out thousands of dollars for cabinets and arcade boards that are getting more and more rare as time goes on, or raise the Jolly Roger and start sailing. Aiding is still around after all these years. They incorporated Rising into their team, and we haven't seen any shooters from them in a while. Since the year 2000, I think. Turns out they were ex-Toplan members after the company folded. Those were the Truxton and Zero Wing guys. The all your base are belong to us guys. After Toplan went under, the team split up into 4 different companies. Cave, Gazelle, Takumi, and Aiding. And they worked on Bloody Roar, Pikmin 4, DNF Duel, and a bunch of big-name fighting games for Capcom and Konami as well. Yes, they made Castlevania Judgment 2. I'm not exactly thrilled about it either, but who knows what the future holds for Aiding. A collection of their shooters would be a day one buy for me. Not just the Bat trilogy, but the entire catalog of shmups in one big collection. But a man can dream.